Hey everybody, welcome back to A Matter of Life and Maiden, the podcast of the Beast. I am Joe Labriola, and as I sit here and I'm still processing Nicko McBrain's retirement announcement on December 7th, 2024, which was yesterday. I'm recording this on December 8th, 2024, and they just announced the new drummer, um, Simon Dawson, who has played with Steve and British Lion for 12 years. I think he's going to fill in and do well for what's needed for tour purposes. But I will say it is reassuring to know that Nicko is still around and he's still going to be an active part of Iron Maiden. He's not leaving the band. He's just not touring anymore. And if you watch the YouTube videos when Nick's playing his last show with Iron Maiden in Sao Paulo, Bruce says those exact words. He says, he's just not touring with us anymore and playing live shows, but he is still very much a part of this band. So I'm assuming then that means that if they ever do any studio recordings or if there is a new LP that has been recorded, Nicko will be playing drums on that. I can't see why they would change that. So I feel like that's a good sign. That's reassuring. I do feel like also that he's very deserving of it, and he's given us so much. And I kind of talked about that in the previous podcast episode I did that was dedicated to Nicko at my initial reaction to discovering his retirement announcement and how I felt about that, because it was very emotional for me, and it's still emotional for me. I'm thinking about today, and that's kind of why I'm jumping on today to record another episode, and this is going to be more kind of like the life part of A Matter of Life and Maiden. And with that, I want to go back and just recap how much these guys have meant to me over the last 20 years. And I know I did an episode a while ago where I talked about my life experiences kind of with Iron Maiden and every album and how I grew up and all those things down the line, but it's kind of like a rehash of that. It might be more of the same, it might be a little different, because as things come and go into my mind and they go out, and this is organic, like Matt and I said at the beginning when we created this thing. It's just we kind of post our feelings about how we feel about the band and what they've brought us and what they've given us. So for me, I just want to dive in, and I just want to say, I kind of touched on it a little bit in the last episode. When I was 18 years old, I had just started getting into Iron Maiden. It was 2004, and so 20 years ago, a little over 20 years ago, and Matt had been listening to metal music, or had been getting into metal music, right before we had graduated high school. So we graduated high school in June of 2004, and he probably started listening in the spring or the early summer of 2004 to Metallica and bands like that, and was getting into them. I think And Justice for All was the first Metallica record he bought. And while he was going through, because Napster and stuff like that, and all these sharing apps and file sharing apps were so popular back in the day, music files, WAV files, all that stuff, MP3s, MP4s. Well, I guess MP4s are movies, but MP3s. And he had stumbled upon the Trooper. He had heard it. Well, he was just kind of, got a suggestion from one of those sites saying, hey, this is something you might like if you like Metallica or whatever. And he was also listening to Dio, something you might like if you like Dio, something that's related to Holy Diver. And he heard the Trooper, and he was trying to figure out who sung it. He had no idea, because we talked about this all the time. And technology back then was not like it is now, where you can just, ask one of your software things like Siri, Alexa, or whatever, and ask them for what you need. Hey Google, whatever, things like that. Hey Cortana. That stuff didn't exist. And the internet wasn't as advanced as it is now with all that stuff. Even 20 years ago, it doesn't seem like, it's crazy to think about how much it's evolved in the last 20 years, but it really has evolved tremendously, like where everything is at your fingertips in today's society, like literally everything. 20 plus years ago, we still kind of lived in that age where you still needed tangible things. You still needed paper. You still needed physical copies of things. You still needed to have that stuff, because the MP3 format and all those things were just new, and it was fledgling. But yeah, I mean, I was more into pop punk, and I liked a little bit of classic rock, but I wasn't really into metal music at all. I was going through at that point in time for several years, from the time I was about 16 until I turned 18. About 2 years, I was going through this really pop punk heavy phase. I was really into like Green Day and Blink 182 and bands like that. They were my favorite bands at the time. And it was just because of how I felt as a person, and what I was going through in my life and my experience with heartbreak and relationships. And it was the popular stuff to be in at the time. It was what I kind of felt like I needed to explore. And then eventually, Matt had got a guitar shortly shortly after graduation, and he had started playing on it. And it might even been before graduation. It might even have been earlier that year in 2004. And he had been playing on it. And another thing that he kind of wanted to do, we started hanging out some more and getting back into hanging out more often. And we used to have these little iPod minis that were filled with music. They were 4 gig iPod minis. And back then, it wasn't like your phone just Bluetooth connected to your car or anything like that. You had to buy this device. It was called an FM transponder. You had to plug it into your cigarette adapter in your car and then tune it to a radio station so you could pick up the signal from your iPod where the music could play through. And it was like you needed 3 or 4 pieces of equipment to listen to music. And like I said, it only held 4 gig of music, so you might have had maybe 100 or so songs on there. But back then, you thought it was amazing because it was like, wow, this is high tech, and it was, compared to just putting in individual CDs. Or I had a tape deck in my car initially to listen to, so cassettes. But how time evolved and went through, that was 2004. 2005, I really started to get into Maiden. I was kind of like, I liked a couple of their songs, but I didn't really dive in fully until like 2005. That's when I really, really got into them. And I got a SG copy guitar for my birthday my dad had got me. And Matt had been playing, like I said, at that point in time for several years. And he had just bought a Kirk Hammett Signature, the skull and crossbone inlay guitar, the all black ESP, Kirk Hammett from Metallica. Back then, Matt's two favorite bands were Iron Maiden at number one, and like right behind them was Metallica. They were like his two favorite bands, and I I liked a little bit of their stuff, both of them, but I wasn't really into them. And then in 2005, that's when I really turned the corner and really, really got obsessed and dove in, because I had started playing guitar too. I got a guitar because Matt was influencing me. He was my best friend. I knew him since I was 5 years old, so he's like a brother to me. He's like a brother to me. So we were trying to hang out and form a band and listen to similar music, and then I just went full swing and full circle. Like as soon as I got into Iron Maiden and I started playing guitar, I remember like to the T, like it was yesterday. It was like 2005. We were driving around. We were jamming, playing guitar at my parents' place. I used to live in the attic, in an attic room, and we kind of decked that out with our guitars and had amps and stuff up there. And I remember it was he was just playing me songs, and I just went full turn after I heard "How Would Be That Name" and dove in. And then shortly after that, it was they were amping up and releasing promo material and stuff for "A Matter of Life and Death," that album. And as you all know, when I got into that album, I was hooked immediately. And there's pictures of me. I have like old pictures of me wearing a Reincarnation Benjamin Brigg T-shirt, playing that guitar, that SG copy with a crappy amp that my dad bought me at this junk store that used to be in our town called Crazy Hazy's. And I loved it though. I mean, I beat the crap out of that guitar and that amp. And Matt had some newer stuff. He was really getting into it. He was progressing. He had been playing for about 2 years at that point, and I had just kind of started. So he was getting more into like the intermediate phase. I was just a beginner, and he was getting better stuff, better tech. He had like a Line 6 amp. He was starting to get pedals, wah, and all that kind of stuff. And I had that guitar. And then after A Matter of Life and Death came out, that's when I like became super. Now, like I said, I was hooked on them in '05. And then in '06, it was like everything I wanted to do was Maiden. It was like nobody else. I didn't care about any other bands. I was listening to metal. End of '04, '05, I started listening to Metallica, Megadeth, Iron Maiden, things like that. And at that point in time, I wanted to be a little bit different than that. So, like, I really love Dave Mustaine from Megadeth, and I was like, I want to be like them. I think they're awesome. They're really cool. But like, I always kept coming back to Maiden. Always kept coming back to Maiden. And then eventually, like I said, in '05, I was like, man, these guys are unbelievable. And I really dove into them and liked them a lot. And I can remember saying to myself, like, yeah, if I had to pick like three bands right now that are my favorite, it's going to be like Iron Maiden, Megadeth, and Metallica. They were my three favorite bands. Similarly to Matt, he really liked Metallica and Megadeth. Or excuse me, Metallica and Iron Maiden. He wasn't as much into Megadeth as I was. But then as things started to progress and we started jamming together, and then I started learning licks and started learning things, and we started writing songs and stuff together and just making things up together and jamming, our influences then we started to share our influences. Matt kind of went down this and prog rock and traditional new wave of British heavy metal route and a little bit of progressive metal route. And he went down like an instrumental guitar player route. He was getting me into guys like Joe Satriani, Steve Vai, John Petrucci solo stuff, the stuff from G3, guys like that. He got me into Queensryche, the band Yes, the British progressive rock band, and those are some of my biggest influences to this day because of him. And then I was kind of getting him into kind of like not quite, I wouldn't say they were super new, but like Dream Theater and Between the Buried and Me and Trivium and bands like that. A little bit different style. And Opeth, bands like that, heavier stuff. I was kind of going down that trajectory. So I was getting into more of that kind of realm. And then eventually, like I said, we had hung out so often. We were hanging out for 3 or 4 days a week for hours on end, like all day long, just jamming and talking about music to the point where it morphed into I love progressive rock, the newer metal kind of stuff. Not new metal, but like Opeth and Dream Theater and progressive metal and things like that. The heavier stuff, more like death metal-y sounding stuff, melodic death metal. And the traditional stuff like Maiden and thrash, like Metallica and Megadeth, to the point where we were both very similar in our tastes and our interests, and we both liked a lot of the same bands. And Matt started getting into like bands like Meshuggah, going back and listening to bands like Tool and all these things. So like I said, they opened the floodgates up for us as just music lovers. Iron Maiden did. But they never stopped being our favorite band. We had seen so many concerts together. We went back and we saw Yes several times together. We saw G3 once together. We saw Generation Axe together. We'd seen Queensryche together, Dream Theater several times together. We saw Trivium a couple times together. We saw Ghost. We've seen so many bands together that I'm sitting here trying to recount all of it. It's just been so many times. Metallica we saw together. I don't know if I mentioned Megadeth already. Probably did, but I'm just sitting here thinking about it. So many concerts that him and I had been together to see, and went together to see, and a lot of our other friends too. Jeremy Kramer from high school, Matt Fernari from high school, my brother too, a couple concerts with us. So they really opened the floodgates, and that kind of went on from a period from when we really got into Maiden. He got into them before I did. He got into them in like 2004. For me, it was 2005, and then we were both really hooked on them in '06. And then really ever since then, it was just us constantly exploring new music and getting excited about heavy metal, in particular Iron Maiden. Because A Matter of Life and Death, that record was like the cream of the crop. To this day, it's one of my favorite albums of all time. And I know in 2008, when Metallica released Death Magnetic, I was really into that album too. But I kept comparing it to Iron Maiden. I was like, it's good, but it's not Maiden. It's not Maiden. Maiden always had that extra edge and that extra love from me as a fan. And I haven't talked to Matt in a while because he's been super busy with his life. He has 2 kids now and he's married. He doesn't really participate in the podcast anymore. He hasn't participated since the last episode we recorded in regards to the Book of Souls live chapter. And then we were on kind of a hiatus for 2.5, 3.5 years or something like that, and then I decided to restart this thing because I wanted to share my passions because I'm still very passionate about this. He may very well be too. Like I said, I haven't talked to him really for a while. It's been a couple years. The last time we hung out was when we went to go see Legacy of the Beast in Washington, D.C. together in 2022. And even then, we didn't really get a chance to talk that much because we had both drove separately. I brought my dad with me. We stayed in a different hotel. He brought his wife. We didn't really talk at all, hardly at all. But, it's just been how life has been for us lately. And, yeah, I mean, honestly, I hate to say this, but we're not as close as we used to be. He's become a family man now, and that's his priority, and that's number one. And good for him. I'm happy for him. I really am. I see some of the stuff on Facebook, some of the pictures he posts, and he looks very, very happy. And he has two beautiful kids, and he's very happily married, and I'm very, very happy for him for that. But with that being said, my passion still lies, and I want to pursue it. I want to continue to push this podcast forward and to make new episodes and talk about the life aspect because that's a part of it. So for me, after that, after we kind of exchanged things from 2006 to the last time I talked to him, as far as I know, he still loves that. We both love it. And going through the years here, it's just funny talking about how time flies and kind of just reiterating Nicko's retirement speech again. I've been a Maiden fan for 20 years, and it seems like I literally just started listening to them. I'm not kidding. This is literally what it feels like a year ago. They have given me so much in 20 years that it literally feels like they are brand new to me. That it feels like they're a brand new band to me because everything that they've churned out, I have loved and digested and just been infatuated with and obsessed with. And it takes me back to rediscovering metal music through Iron Maiden and rediscovering Iron Maiden. And like I said, they are head and shoulders, leaps and bounds above any other band in the world. They are more than a band to me. They are a way of life. They are a religion to me. They are a philosophy to me. And I truly mean that. They are deeply ingrained into my DNA, into my genetic makeup, into my belief system, how I carry myself. And I've had several fans on here and subscribers to A Matter of Life and Maiden express the same sentiments to me in some of the comments for some of these episodes. That's how much they really touch their fans. That's how much they have invested in making sure that their fans have a great time and a good show and really influencing us as people and shaping us as people. And it's true. When you go to a Maiden show, if you've ever been to a Maiden show, you'll see it. Every time I've talked to people who have said how amazing and important they are as a band. And like I'm sitting here stating, it's true. It's true. All through my teens, 18 up until, like I said, 2006. At that point in time, A Matter of Life and Death came out, and that, to this day, and I've talked about this previously on several episodes, it's the album that changed my life. It's the Iron Maiden record that I was obsessed with the most, and every Iron Maiden record that came out after that, I had kind of put beside it and been like, isn't as good as Amalad. And for the most part, there have been records that have been damn near as good right there. Their catalog in general is absolutely phenomenal. There are a few albums that, are weaker. And by that, you who have been following the podcast, No Prayer for the Dying and Fear the Dark are my least favorite albums. And Virtual Eleven and The X Factor aren't the strongest in their catalog. But if you take those 4 albums aside and you sit there and you look at the other 13, they have 13 solid, absolutely killer albums. They are amazing. They are amazing. And they're all different. And for me, A Matter of Life and Death, as I said, but also there was a time where I was really into Powerslave because I'm a historian, and in particular, my favorite focus area to study is classics. antiquity, especially Rome, Greece, and Egypt. So Power Slave, obviously that cover. It's ancient Egypt. I was obsessed with the Power Slave record forever. Seeing Somewhere Back in Time, that concert, changed my life. And I've said this before. If A Matter of Life and Death was the album that changed my life and made me the person I am, and including everything I said and mentioned before about the band and who they are as people, then Somewhere Back in Time was the live show that changed my life and made me the person I am today. And then every show since then has just built upon that and just made it even cooler and better from what I initially anticipated and expected, and changed it up in unique ways, and has been diverse and just spectacular in its own right. But through college, I started college in 2008, and I wore the crap out of every Iron Maiden album up to that point. It was from the original to A Matter of Life and Death at that point, because it had been the most recent release. And I can't stress enough how A Matter of Life and Death is such an impactful record. I think when you look at it, it is the most underrated album in their entire discography. It is so spectacular. And I know that that's probably me being biased because it's the first record that came out when I became a fan. But, man, there's just something powerful about it. I don't know what it is, but it's phenomenal. It's a phenomenal album. It changed my life, and it's probably because of the nostalgic attachment I have to it and my discovery of all these amazing things around that time period too. And I'm sure that is incorporated into why I love it so much. But it always will be. It's because it's that important to me. It's that big of a part of my life. And that record is just immense. It's just immense. But I know that, some of the first songs I ever heard, and it's funny how Nicko just announced his retirement, and the first album he played on was Peace of Mind, and the first song Matt ever played for me was Flight of Icarus from Peace of Mind, because like I said, I'm a huge antiquarian, and I love mythology and ancient Greece and all that kind of stuff, and I loved it first time I heard it. And then he started playing, he played The Trooper, he's playing some stuff from Peace of Mind for me, played Wicker Man for me, then he started to get a little bit more progressive, played Ghost of the Navigator for me, then he went back, and I honestly remember it like it was yesterday. This is the exact order it was. He played Flight of Icarus to me, and I remember the first time I heard it, we were driving past a local mall in our town called the Logan Valley Mall. We were driving past it, and we were getting ready to park and go into it. And he was playing that song, and we sat in the parking lot and finished listening to it. After that, he played for me. We were going to pick up our buddy who lived across town, Matt Fernary. We were bowling together. We went bowling a couple nights a week. We were pretty good, actually. We got really, really good at it. He played Wicker Man for me, Ghost of the Navigator, and 2 Minutes to Midnight on the way to pick him up and get to the bowling alley. And after that, he played Number of the Beast when I had dropped him off, Matt Fernary off, after we went bowling and we were done hanging out and I was taking Matt back home. He was playing stuff from Number of the Beast. He had played me the title track, Number of the Beast. And then he was going through a bunch of different metal music. So he would play me like one Maiden song, and then like he'd play me like a Halloween song or a Metallica song or a Megadeth song. And then he would go back to Maiden again, and he kind of like just spoon fed me all these little tidbits of Maiden, but I remember that distinctly, and it was that order. It was Flight of Icarus first. After that, it was Wicker Man, Ghost of the Navigator, 2 Minutes to Midnight, and then Number of the Beast on the way back. And after that, he would just give me a little bit more and a little bit more, and he'd be like, hey, listen to The Mercenary. Never really played me too much stuff from Dance of Death. I didn't really hear any of that stuff till later. It was mostly Peace of Mind, Power Slave, Number of the Beast, and Brave New World. And I think part of that reason, too, is because he was just getting into them, too. He didn't really know what all they had out there either. He was just kind of like digesting the stuff that they had, and he was kind of sharing with me the songs that he liked or the songs that he enjoyed. And then as he started to expand and he got into their entire discography and got more into it, then so did I. And I can remember going over to his house one time, and he's like, did you hear this one yet? And it was Phantom of the Opera. And I was like, singer sounds different. It doesn't sound like the original singer. And I was like, no, that's actually not the original singer. That's Bruce Dickinson. He came in after this guy, Paul Di'Anno. And I just remember us like going through it because, like I said, back then, Wikipedia wasn't fully fledged out. Everything was kind of like bits and pieces. You had to do research online. You had to go to forums. You had to look through stuff. It took you a while to figure things out. You had to go to your local library and get books and stuff out, which we did. We were avid learners. We wanted to learn everything we could. So, but I can just remember, and then him starting to learn to play it, and then me starting to learn to play it, and us just going to Guitar Center in Monroeville, Pennsylvania, and driving up to look at guitars, or if we saw other bands that we loved, we would go do stuff in Greensburg, Pennsylvania, at the Palace Theater. Just, they opened up so much for us, and I can remember driving around town, and even outside of Maiden, like I said, listening to some obscure music, just like Frank Zappa, or Yes, and Queensryche, like I said, and I remember watching Operation Live Crime with Matt and loving the Mindcrime album. And it's because of Iron Maiden, though. Everything that I experienced in terms of like guitar playing, my interests, my guitar heroes, my musical heroes, they all, like, Iron Maiden is the core of that. Everything else is kind of surrounding that. But the core of it, the heart of it, starts with Iron Maiden, and then it kind of like branches off and goes around that. Iron Maiden is the sun of the solar system, and it's going around the planets and heating everything up and making sure that everything gets, the proper sunlight and gets nourished. That's kind of how I feel about it. They are the heart and soul of my music love. And then other bands, I did an episode a while back where I said my 25 favorite bands outside of Iron Maiden. It's because of Iron Maiden that I like those bands. It's because of Iron Maiden that I like those bands. So it's very, very interesting to me of how far I've come, but I've had so many experiences. And I talked about some of the first songs I heard. I can just remember sitting down and getting obsessed with, like I said, A Matter of Life and Death and Power Slave for the longest time. They were albums that I beat the crap out of my MP3 player playing those over and over and over and over and over and over again. That little iPod Mini I talked about. And then later I got a Microsoft Zune. They don't even make them anymore. It was like Microsoft's version of the iPod. I beat the crap out of it. I still have it actually in a box upstairs. And I just looked at it the other day and it still has like all the Iron Maiden stuff on it that I had. I have nothing else on there because I was like, if it can only hold so much, I want all Iron Maiden. And the background's an Iron Maiden background. It's just, it's so cool. Like, going back and finding these unique trinkets and things. Just thinking about Iron Maiden. But, like I said, looking back on Nicko's retirement and him getting old, it's so hard for me to believe it's been 20 years. That means I'm getting old too. And how fast time flies, like the age-old saying, like, time flies when you're having fun. And I have always had fun with Iron Maiden. I have always, every time I listen to them, I get lost in their music. And I've, in particular, been listening to Peace of Mind the last day or two and going back and just digesting it and digesting it and digesting it over and over again. And I know I already love it, and I said how amazing it is a million times, but it is a fucking amazing record. I love that album. Yeah, it's unbelievable. It's Matt's personal favorite. I think it's his favorite album or his most relatable album. And, for good reason. It's astounding. When you hear the difference of Nicko, and I love Clive too. Clive's a hell of a drummer too. They're both fucking unbelievable drummers. Obviously, I love Nicko more. But when you hear Where Eagles Dare, when he just comes in with like, I mean, it's game over. I mean, it's like, this dude is fucking awesome. Like, you knew he was going to be a legend then. And it's so surreal to look at that and hear him on an album play that as the opening track. And then fast forward now to 2024 when he just announced his retirement from live shows with Iron Maiden. And it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, like it came true. It's like whenever Clive left the band and they got Nicko, they knew. They knew. They made the right decision. They knew that this was the guy and that he was going to be in the band for as long as he had been. And we sit here, and I'm so naive as a Maiden fan that I just saw them a month ago to the day today on the Future Past Tour in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on November 8th, 2024. Today's December 8th, 2024. So naive that I was sitting there thinking, oh yeah, I'll see Nicko in 2 years. Not sitting there realizing, like, holy shit, the guy's 72 years old. Maybe I won't see Nicko in 2 years. Maybe he'll retire. Not taking into consideration the fact that he had a stroke and he had some health issues before that with his vocal cord cancer and other problems that he's had over the past several years. And even Bruce with his issues and struggles and the other guys in the band too. Like, not realizing that and just thinking that they're immortal. And they're going to be immortal. Please don't misquote me here. They are going to be immortal. They are immortal in the annals of music history forever, for all time. They will always be around. Long after they're gone, long after I'm gone, long after the generation after me's gone, they will always be able to look back, the people of the future, and say, oh shit, yeah, this is Iron Maiden's discography. This is when they were around. They're always going to be around. This is what Steve Harris looked like. This is what Nicko McBrain looked like. This is what Bruce looked like. This is what Yannick Gears looked like. This is what Adrian looked like. This is what the guys in the band looked like. They're always going to have that. That's what Dave Murray looked like. It's just, it will always be there. It will always be there. They are going to be immortal. But in terms of, obviously, people age and people get older and we're human beings. We can't live forever. So, but I think that's the hardest part to come to terms with, because when you see these guys play live and when there's people who have seen them and have been fans for longer than I have been a fan. And I'm not saying that I'm an Iron Maiden expert, but I'm just saying that they are one of the most deeply passionate things in my life. Like, I'm deeply passionate about them. And I have been ever since I became a fan. So, for me, for 20 years, and there are people who have been fans of them for 50 years. Their 50th anniversary is coming up, or 45 years. They are a way of life for us, and it's just, they are people. And like I said, it's hard to come to terms with, because when you see how they have been just crushing it, tour after tour, album after album, jumping over these health struggle hurdles and just slamming through brick walls with everything that they do, you think when you go to see them or you listen to their interviews or you watch them perform that, like, they can live forever. They give you that feeling like their longevity is paramount, like they're never going to stop. They're never going to stop. You always get that feeling, and I've always had that feeling ever since I first heard Rock in Rio in like 2005 and watched that video and saw them. I was like, damn, these guys are fucking amazing. The adrenaline that they have, just the charisma and the enthusiasm and the show that they put on stage, the energy that they have, some of the greatest. And like, you can feel it even if you pop in. Like, I challenge you right now to pop in the Rock in Rio DVD, or honestly any DVD for that matter, or any concert footage or concert video of Iron Maiden. Put it into your DVD player, your video game console, whatever you're using. If you're streaming it, if you have it saved to your computer, whatever you're doing, or even look up videos on YouTube from tours that fans have posted. Go in there and watch them, and watch the enthusiasm and the energy I'm talking about. I mean, they are the most enthusiastic, energetic, and just like, you can feel it. They're a band. They're the only band that I can say that when you put, in my opinion, when you put a live DVD in, or even a studio LP, when you put it in, you feel like you're at a live show. You feel like you're seeing them perform. And whenever I discovered what they looked like and what their voices sounded like and how they talked to each other, that's the hardest part, because you grow to love them. You grow to love who they are. You grow to love who they are. And when you listen to a video or a movie, or I'll even say it, when I put in Senjutsu when it first came out and I was listening to it, you kind of drift off in your head here, in your imagination, and you're thinking about seeing them perform these songs live. And I'll be honest, envisioning it, and I'm not saying I'm Nostradamus, but envisioning it in my head and how it sounded and what they looked like on stage wasn't too far off and too much different from what it actually looked like when they actually got to the point where they performed the Senjutsu songs live. It was almost exactly what I pictured in my mind it would be, because they're so authentic and so genuine that it's almost like you as a person can have a premonition about what the thing's going to look like. It seriously feels that way. Like, they are linked to your psyche, like mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. And Matt said this before when we were recording an episode. I can't remember which one exactly it was. But Going to an Iron Maiden show was like a pilgrimage to us, he said. And I wholeheartedly support him in that statement. 100%. I back him 100%. That is exactly what it's like. It's almost like a religious experience, a spiritual experience. And I'm not saying that jokingly. Like I genuinely mean that. I genuinely mean that. And having been a person who has loved them for 20 years, my favorite thing in the world, my favorite band, a way of life for me, a religion, a philosophy, whatever you want to call it, it's true. And if you're a devout Maiden fan or a big Maiden fan, or they are your favorite thing or your favorite band, or they are ingrained into your DNA and in your psyche like they are with me and millions of other people around the world, then you'll know what I'm talking about when I say that. But yeah, I know this has been kind of a tangential episode because I've kind of gone back and forth between a bunch of different things, but I'm just kind of sitting here thinking about my life and reflecting on my love for Iron Maiden over these last 20 years and how I evolved. I mean, it's crazy because it's so surreal. It's just so surreal to me. I still feel like I'm 18 years old. I still feel like I'm 18 years old. And I think it's one of those times or one of those things you think about. I mean, when you become an adult, you got to carry your enthusiasm and your imagination into your adulthood that you had from childhood. Because if you don't, then things get mundane, they get boring, they get repetitive. These guys have carried their passions and their inspirations. I mean, these guys were in Iron Maiden in their 20s and 30s. They're and even before that, they loved music. Obviously, they're professional musicians. They've carried everything with them for the last 50 or more years. And that's the beauty of it. That's why they've been around so long and they've been able to put out such quality stuff. And I'm just using them as kind of like a metaphor for how to live your life and not be miserable as an adult. Like, that's why I say they're so important to me. And that's why it's kind of sad, because you see Nicko take a step back from live touring and you're like, are they not going to be around anymore? Well, what am I going to do now? It's almost like you get lost without them. And I truly mean that. It's like, when Maiden does decide to hang this thing up and they're done or whatever, I'm going to be lost. I'm going to be lost and trying to find something or some band or some kind of medium or something that's close to them. And I like a lot of music now, thank God, that I like a lot of different music now because of them. And there are bands that are similar to them. No one's ever going to touch them, though. I'm never going to be as into any other band than I am as Iron Maiden. Like, nobody will come close. But I'm thankful that there are some other bands who I do like and I'm fond of, who kind of share that similar philosophy way of life and how they handle themselves and carry themselves like Iron Maiden. But like I said, take a note from the Iron Maiden playbook and carry your passions and your love and your desires and your imagination and your enthusiasm into adulthood. Like, never give up on it. Because I said this before, when I was in college in that year, 2008, when I started, my life was at an all-time high. Everything was awesome. I was discovering new subject matter, new authors, new books, new historical perspectives and research and things I was doing while I was pursuing my studies at the university, while also discovering new music, learning new guitar licks, discovering new movies. Matt and I made it. My brother actually started it, and then Matt and I made a commitment to go back with my brother, and IMDb, the International Movie Database, had a top 250 movie list of the top 250 highest ranked movies of all time, some of the greatest movies of all time. And we made it a commitment to go back and start watching those movies. And it's funny because a lot of the movies on that list, Iron Maiden had kind of wrote songs about. The Duelist, Jacob's Ladder, which the Legacy is supposed to be loosely based off of, The Longest Day, Where Eagles Dare, The list goes on and on. You talk about literary works, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Coleridge, The Red and the Black, historical figures, Alexander the Great, The Mercenary about Predator, Thin Line Between Love and Hate, that song. There's movies and literary works about that. Alice Island Planet, C.S. Lewis, Brave New World, a book by Aldous Huxley. Sci-fi and everything was kind of just like morphed into it. The Final Frontier album, The Final Frontier, that's Star Trek. Like, they just kind of have these play on words or these lyrics where they actually loosely base things off stuff and make it more thematic, or they actually base entire songs off of historical films or literature or philosophy or everything that my academic discipline was tied to, what I wanted to study. Same thing with Matt, historian or historians. So when I say they are deeply ingrained in my life, I don't mean that jokingly. Like, I mean that, like, I have a master's degree in history. I studied history for 7 years after high school. I wrote dozens of thesis papers, 25, 30, 50 pages long, about historical subject matter that I did research on. And a lot of it was closely related to Iron Maiden and what they talk about. It's just how it is. That's who they are as people. Like I said, they're so influential. And I don't even know where to go from here, because it's just, this podcast episode would be, and it's not structured. I didn't sit down and structure this. I'm kind of just free forming it. The one I did before, I went through every album and kind of talked about how it related to my life and how I remember where I was when I first heard these songs, or etc. And it was kind of more structured. This is like a free form. I'm just coming from the top of the dome here, just spilling my guts out about how much I love Iron Maiden. And especially with Nicko's recent retirement. It's not going to be the same. And I think I'll say it now, because maybe a lot of people haven't said it, but it's kind of the hard truth. Like, it's not going to be the same. Iron Maiden as we know it is not going to be the same. And I'm not saying that they're, diminished or anything because of it. Well, I mean, they kind of are, because Nicko's not going to be there. I mean, but obviously their spirit, and they're going to continue to do whatever they want to do because they're Iron Maiden. They will continue to play live shows. They will release whatever they decide to release. They will do what they want to do. And just because Nicko isn't around doesn't mean that he's gone. He's still going to support the band. He's still going to do things with the band. And I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. And that's kind of why this episode and this rant that I'm on is a little spacey and not exactly coherent, probably. But I'm just trying to tie things in for my life and talk about things. Like, even the last song they played with Nicko live in Sao Paulo was Wasted Years. And when I just even sit here and just think of the lyrics to that song and how poetic and beautiful it was for Nicko to go out that way, even though it's an Adrian Smith song, for it to be the last song that they played for him as his farewell, like the last song he ever played live is Wasted Years. It just fits perfectly. Just the meaning of that song. Don't waste your time only searching for those wasted years. Face up, make your stand, and realize you're living in the golden years. Kind of like what I'm talking about. Hey, realize that right now, at this very moment, you can do whatever you want to do and be passionate about it and love it and carry it with you, for the next second, the next minute, the next hour, the next day, the next month, whatever, the next year, the next several years, the next couple decades, the next 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. Carry it with you. Because time's short is kind of what's that about. And it's kind of a really good way to send off Nicko, because that's exactly kind of what he's saying in his farewell statement. His retirement from touring statement. In a matter of speaking, when you know the backstory, you know the history about him, and you know that he's had health struggles, and there were some videos on YouTube that I had watched in regards to Nicko's retirement, and they obviously showed their love for him and their honor for him. But there were some who said like his playing wasn't up to par and they couldn't play songs that they initially played after Nicko had the stroke. And I'll be completely honest with you, whether that was the case or not, it very well may have been. I never really looked into it deep enough. I was just glad that he was okay to see if that was the case, or if somebody said, "Oh, we can't play these songs on Future Past because Nick's not going to be able to keep up because of the stroke." I never could even tell. I didn't even know that, if that's the case, because I can sit here and tell you right now, when I saw them on Somewhere back in time, he was fucking spot on. Obviously, that was 2008, and fast forward to 2024, 16 and a half years later, or more, almost 17 years later, when I saw him play on the Future Past tour, the guy didn't miss a beat. So I don't know what they were saying with, I don't know if he's going to be able to play the energy of the Future Past tour was just as energetic and charismatic and motivational, and just you could feel the power of it as Somewhere Back in Time was. So I don't know what that was about. Like I'm not sure, but maybe he was pushing through and he was struggling. Maybe he did tell the guys a while back, yeah, this might be my last one. And that's another thing too. Like I would think after reading all these announcements and stuff that the guys in the band would have known. I don't think he just announced like yesterday to the band members like, "Hey, this is my last show." I'm thinking he probably told those guys like maybe when this 2024 leg started. He was like, "Hey guys, just want to let you know that I think this might be my last run." And he very well could have. He very well could have told them, "Hey, look, these next couple months, this is gonna be great. I want to enjoy it with you guys. I love you guys, but after this is over, I'm done." And they still announced Run for Your Lives in September, and they probably already knew at that point too that Nick was gonna retire from live touring at the end of this leg. So, they probably had stuff geared up and set up already, which is great because that's always how they are. They're very prepared. They're very like ready to go, gung ho, and they know what they're going to do and how it's going to be. But I wouldn't be surprised if at the end of the Run for Your Lives tour in 2026, they release a new album that they recorded previously. Nick's going to be on it, and then if they keep Simon Dawson as the drummer, he'll play it live, and then Nick will be obviously like the behind the scenes, and they'll do things like that, and he'll make guest appearances, and he'll be part of the interview process, and Simon might be as well, which will be interesting to see. But I think it's going to be cool, and I do think it's how it's going to be. It's almost like what Judas Priest was doing with Glenn Tipton. Glenn came in for some of the last couple of records, and he was having his own issues, and they had like Andy Sneap perform live then, his guitar parts. And then Richie Faulkner kind of would embellish and create some things that sounded like Glenn, and they would try to tie things together and work things together, and he would get Glenn's input and Glenn's feedback, and Glenn would be there telling him, "No, try it like this, or do this, or change this." And I think, obviously with Glenn it's a little bit more severe because he can't even really play guitar anymore. He's having a lot of problems that way. Nick can still play the drums hella well, and he's still going to play with Titanium Tart, his little Iron Maiden cover band. So Nick's not stopping playing. That's a huge difference. I just think the extensive tour is wearing on him, and he's getting old and he's getting tired, and he's 72. 72. You're flying all these different places. You got to play a hour and 45 minute or 2 hour plus minute show pretty much every other night for months on end. He's 72, so that's understandable. But he's still in Iron Maiden. I want to say this too, and maybe I didn't clarify that last time. He's still in Iron Maiden, like he's still part of the band. And I don't mean that like, obviously, even if he were to leave permanently and be like, "I'm done, I'm not doing anything," he'd be part of the band, obviously, because he's going to be immortalized forever with them. And they all have an amazing brotherly relationship with each other, a familial bond with each other. What I mean by that is he's just retiring from live touring. He never said like I'm done with Iron Maiden. He just said I'm done with live touring. And in that farewell post too, just analyzing it a little bit more, and you look at it, it states it states that he's still going to be involved with many projects. And what I think that means is recording. He definitely will be involved in recording. I don't think he's stepping away from recording their studio LPs if they decide to make one more record or another record or a live album or whatever it's going to be. He's not going to step away from that. He's not going to step away from that. So now, obviously, if they make a Run for Your Lives record, the live record, if it's going to be a live record, you're going to have Simon on there playing the drums, which will be cool too. It'll be different to hear. But I think for the purpose of studio stuff, Nick's going to be all over that. I mean, think about it. Let's say Run for Your Lives is over and they release that new album in 2026. They probably recorded it when Nick was, let's see, they probably recorded it in 2021, 2020. Nick was 70 at that point, or in his late 60s. I mean, it's already in the bag. It's already in the bag. And it'd be a hell of a lot easier for him to hop on a plane and fly to a recording studio for a couple weeks and not have to, just sit there and play the drums, not have to perform a 2-hour set, take his time, pace himself, work with the guys to write stuff. He can still do that. It's just the other stuff going on with live touring, he can't. So, yeah. And then obviously in the studio, they can fine tune everything and break it down piece by piece. And he only has to play 1 or 2 takes to get it down pat to where it's perfect, and then he's done. He can leave and go home. He doesn't have to worry about going out now and playing 80, 90, 100 plus shows in front of people playing those songs. He just needs to go make a solid cut of the recording, and he's done. And I think he'll continue to do that. I think he'll be part of the creation of the music moving forward, because he's still technically the drummer in the band. Even though he's not touring with them live, he's still the drummer in the band. So, we shall see. But anyway, I digress. I kind of went off on a tangent, kind of went back and forth here. I'm sorry about that. My mind's all over the place. I'm having a hard time, like I said, processing this whole announcement of Nicko's retirement, and then trying to correlate it with my life experience and my life and how much the band means to me. And I apologize again if this wasn't very structured. I just am having a time with this. I'm having an emotional time with it, and I'm just trying to express my love here and my passion, because I still can't believe it, to be completely honest. It still feels like it's kind of like a dream, but it's not. It's true. It actually happened. So, but my excitement for Maiden is still at an all-time high. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, I think, the rest of the guys are not significantly younger than Nicko, but they're like 4 years younger. Bruce is like 6 years younger. So those guys are in their late 60s. By the time they're done next year, they're going to be in their 70, 71. They do a new album. I hope they do. And that'll be that. I've been reading stuff on forums and things where the guys think they'll give us one more new album, and then they're probably just going to do like a farewell tour. There's a lot of people who are saying we're going to get a new album in 2026. They're going to tour with that up until 2028. And then the last 2 years, 2029 and 2030, that's going to be it. They're going to be done at that point in time. Iron Maiden will be done. And, I can see that. I could definitely see that. At that point in time, 2030, Bruce would be 72, so he'd be Nicko's age. And the rest of the guys in the band would be about 73, 74. So I think 2030 could be it. I really do, and that's not that far away. I mean, think about it. That's less than 5 years away. So I'm thinking that could definitely be the case. We're going to get the Run for Your Lives tour. Although I think it would be absolutely amazing for them to do a Brave New World to the present tour in 2027 or 2028. if they do a new album, it's probably going to be focused on that. So it'll be 2027 and 2028 will be the new album, and then 2029 and 2030, who knows? Maybe in 2029 and 2030 they'll do Brave New World of the Present, because they did Legacy of the Beast, Somewhere Back in Time, and the Run for Your Lives tour, which are all focused on older songs. Maybe in 2029 and 2030 they will do newer stuff. Maybe they will do a set that's based on newer stuff. We'll see. I think it would be cool. It could happen. It could happen. And then we'll see where Nicko is at that point in time. 2030, he'll be 78 years old, so he's going to be damn near 80. We'll see. But I think at that point in time, that's probably when they're going to call it quits and hang it up. I'm saying it's going to be 2030. And, I don't know. What do you guys think? You think 2030 will be the last year we see Iron Maiden? You think it's going to be sooner? I think it's going to be after that. I highly doubt it's going to be after 2030. Those guys are going to be, all of them are going to be in their 70s at that point. And I think that's going to be when they're going to be like, yeah, we're done. I look back at like Black Sabbath and like Tony Iommi and those guys. They hung it up in 2017? And I think Tony was in his late 60s. So late 60s, early 70s or something like that. So I mean, they're the kind of music they play, they're going to have to just be like, yeah, we're done, because they're amazing and I love them, but this is inevitable and it's crazy. I'm glad. I'm just so fortunate and glad that I've had 2 decades, and there's more to come. And if it is 2030, that'll be me having been a fan for 26 years, a Maiden fan, or seeing Maiden as an active band, or them being around as an active band since I was around, since I became a fan. So almost 30 years of my life dedicated to them. And it's crazy to think that. I mean, more than half of my life, I've been a Maiden fan. Like I said, from the time I was 18 years old, and I just turned 38 in September of this year, September of 2024. So 20 years. It's unbelievable to me, but I'm so fortunate to have seen them as many times as I have on the different tours and shows that I have, to have introduced my friends and family to them, to get my friends and family to go see them. I mean, it's been unbelievable. So, but anyway, thanks for listening. I hope you guys go out there and see Iron Maiden on the Run for Your Lives tour with the new drummer, Simon Dawson. I think he's gonna be a good drummer. He sounds pretty good. If you listen to Steve Harris' side project, British Lion, I think their second record, The Burning, is better than the original, and he has a lot of really cool drumming on that, and I think he does a really good job. So check them out. Nicko, we love you, and continue up the irons. Remember, Maiden's life, the rest is history. This has been Joe Labriola from Matter of Life of Maiden, Podcast of the Beast. I'll see you guys next time.